welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back.
Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, June 30th, 2015. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change, joined once again by Duane Long. Yesterday's show was so successful, reaching out to the people and answering questions. Today we're going to pick up where we left off, Duane. There's even some more questions. You ready to rock?
Let's roll.
All right, all meat today. Question number one, besides the guys we know who are going to start, which offensive lineman on the roster right now do you believe has the most potential long-term?
Long-term? Wow, that is a great question, whoever posed that one. You look at so many of the guys that came in last year. I think it's the best class. You know, we always talk about the Brew Crew, but you just had the numbers, just so much depth last year. You know, I would probably have a hard time picking between Bowen and Prince. Those two tackles that came in, both of them just impressed me greatly as high school players. But I have to say this is probably going to surprise people. When I look at Fetter, the kid from New Jersey, that
Kevin Fetter,
I see he is a defensive lineman and quite a good one at his size. He's behind right now. There's no doubt because they didn't play him on offense, and it is different. It's not just stick him in there and think that they're going to play well right away. He is the one when you start talking about long term. The kid that once he gets his feet under him as an offensive lineman, I think that this guy could be a left tackle that we start talking about as he's the best since Orlando Pace. He is the one that can be special. I think Bowen could be, Prince, both of those guys, just incredibly impressive football players. I want to just say something for the inside guys. It's different. You know, I got this thing about tackles, and anybody knows what they're talking about with offensive linemen knows that you talk about tackles. But anyway, inside, I really think Demetrius Knox has outstanding long-term potential. He's going to get a shot to play pretty early because I think Elfline gets moved inside when Bourne leaves, and he's going to be competing with Lease for the other guard spot on the other side of Price. But when I think about future potential, I think about tackles, and Fetter is the one with the long-term potential. But we're just so outstanding on the offensive line now. And I can't remember the last time I've said that we have depth and talent on the offensive line. It's just such a luxury.
I know for a fact that's the first time I've heard you say that. So that's almost a decade. And I will say this, both Kevin Fetter and Brandon Bowen, those are the guys you want getting off the bus first. Those are some big dudes. Among big dudes, those are big dudes. So, all right, let's move on here. Number 2, Egg Harbor, New Jersey wide receiver Amir Mitchell on the Buckeyes' radar. But he doesn't seem like he's a take now. And one of the posters was fearful that if we let him go and don't accept his commitment at some point, he will head for the University of Michigan. Right now, if you look at his crystal ball, 83% to Michigan. What's your feeling on Mitchell, and should he be a take for the Buckeyes?
I really think that the thing that fans get away from is how important looking at these kids' bodies. It's essential that you look at the growth potential. And what is being said about Mitchell is he doesn't look like he's going to be a wide receiver. He looks like one of those kids that's going to blow up like Darren Lee and grow into a linebacker. So if we're recruiting a receiver, sometimes you don't worry about it, Dan. You're like, this kid's a great-looking athlete. I'm recruiting him for this, but if he grows, so be it. If you say, I need to fill this slot on my roster, then you have to make sure you got a kid that's going to play that position. That's what is the big hang-up with Mitchell. He's a talent, no doubt about it, but we're not even really recruiting linebackers much right now. How many offers do we have out? I mean, last year at this time, I think we had 15. I don't know how many we've got now, but it's nothing close to that. But this kid, he's a talent. There's no doubt about it. If we were not worried about him moving to another position, I think he would have an offer right now that was committable, but I don't think that they're trying to get receivers in here, and they got to make sure that the kids. Look at the other kids we're recruiting. We play receiver. We don't know that with Mitchell. If it was just about talent, I think Mitchell would be a take.
Yeah, if you look at Mitchell, he's right now he's listed at 6'3", 206, but I'm watching this video as we record this. He's a bigger kid, and he's a great athlete, but he's used all over the field for Egg Harbor or Cedar Creek, as it were. But he does not look like a traditional receiver. So, and like you mentioned, they are in the mix for some of the elite receivers. So I think it makes sense. And in terms of the question as it was phrased, letting a guy go to Michigan, I think for the most part that's a variable you just can't control, and you got to just take the best players for your squad and let the chips fall where they may. All right, now
you can't do that. You can't worry about where somebody else might land. You got to take the best kids that you can get, and that's what it comes down to. And when you've got the potential to get Nate Craig Myers, Victor Benjamin, who are definitely going to be receivers, you got to do that. You can't worry about where Amir Mitchell is going to end up.
I would also mention this. Amir Mitchell, I think people may have visions of him as being that big receiver. If Nate Craig Myers or Benjamin Victor went elsewhere. Don't forget the year after that, the class of 2017, I really feel strongly they're going to get Trevon Grimes and Jalyn Harris, both of whom are 6'4" or bigger and are pure wide receivers. So that may have something to do with it. Let's move on to defensive end. A number of questions about defensive line. So let's get into it right here. We spoke on this briefly yesterday, but I guess people want some expansion on this topic. Do you see Bosa sliding inside often? And if you do you think they're doing it to get their best four on the field? And do you have a guess at who that might be?
Well, I think that they're going to be trying to cover up the lack of depth at tackle. So they're going to move him down more than they would like to. Ideally, they're only moving him down inside for passing situations. And in that case, I believe you see Bosa, Washington, Lewis, and I don't know if it's going to be Hubbard or if it's going to be Holmes as the end who comes in on the strong side when Bosa does slide down inside. We'll see. Hubbard is really coming on. He's never played the position. I mean, this guy was a safety 2 years ago. He was a linebacker, spent far too much time last year at linebacker. The wild card is going to be Deshaun Cornell. He flashed in the spring for me. Well, I hadn't heard much about him all spring, here and there that he was coming along nicely, but I didn't realize he was that far ahead of the curve. He really looks like a guy that's going to help us as a freshman. He could be another one that steps in there and helps as at the end spot when we slide Bosa down. Those are the guys I'm thinking is going to step in there. Slade is a good-looking football player too. He's going to help us. Ends, we've got all the ends we want, and we got more coming in. Tackles, that's another matter.
No doubt. Okay, that leads us into the next question, which you kind of already sort of answered, but maybe you can expand on it. Of Sam Hubbard, Jalyn Holmes, and Tyquan Lewis, who do you like best as kind of a long-term starter fit?
Well, I love Lewis, and he's got that. He's got the experience. But I think the most talented guy there is going to be Hubbard over the long term. Hubbard should not be playing as well as he is. I was watching him in spring. I isolated on him after I watched the spring game on replay, and he hasn't a clue of what he's doing, but he does it. He's such a gifted athlete. He's long. He's just what you want in an end. And he uses his hands. He gets his hands out in front of him, and I thought that was going to be a problem from a guy who came in from safety who's not used to having to do that. He gets his hands out in front of him. He doesn't know what else to do at this point, but he knows, I'm fast. He's got the first step quickness. He's got the length, and he just goes. And he was causing problems every down. Every down he was a problem. So I think Hubbard long term is a guy that we're going to be really excited about around here.
How good the program is talent-wise now. Jalyn Holmes, if anyone has seen him in person, looks like a superhero. He's third on that group, and it's still considered to be a contributor. That lets you know the depth they have right now. Okay, this is a question that started on the Bucknuts 90 in a break with the producer, Kevin, over the weekend. He and I disagreed. I'm going to let you settle it for us. When all is said and done, Joey Bosa will rank blank among all-time Big Ten defensive ends.
Wow.
I'll just say the two names that were thrown at me. Hold on a sec. The two names that were thrown at me by my producer, Kevin, over the weekend was Courtney Brown. That was actually the main one he used. Courtney Brown, who has the award is actually named after him, that Bosa won this past year's best defensive end in Big Ten. But Courtney Brown was his major argument against Bosa, and I'll say, for the record, I think Bosa has a chance to leave as number one. Just for an example, go look at the statistics. J.J. Watt's senior year matches up about directly to Bosa's freshman year. And although Bosa will only be a 3-year player, I think production's obvious. So where do you stand?
Well, I think that when you look at that, the long term, Dan, look at what this guy was a contributor. He was an all Big Ten caliber player as a freshman. Last year, at the end of the year, he was the most dominant defensive lineman in the country. Nobody was doing what Joey Bosa was doing. He was dominating versus the run and the pass. I think that he could end up being up there. The best I've seen, especially recently, J.J. Watt. I think that Bosa, pure defensive end wise, I think he belongs right up there with Watt, maybe even better. Joey Bosa.
And keep in mind, we're not comparing Watt the pro. I think Watt has blossomed. He would have been the first pick in the draft if he was this good in college. I'm talking just as a college player. To me, Bosa has been the most dominant player I've seen come in. Maybe I'm overwhelmed by the fact that he did it from day one, and I can tell you this, just an anecdotally comment on your point by the end of last year. On the last drive against Oregon in the national championship game, the game was essentially over. Oregon wasn't even threatening. The right tackle for Oregon, when they walked the line of scrimmage, we were sitting, he does not want to be there. It was so obvious, and the ball was snapped, and he literally tackled Bosa. He just had no interest in blocking him anymore. I've never seen that. I mean, he made the guy quit. So I'm in the tent.
It's no surprise. Sure. He's just so dominant, and you can't just point out, well, he's a great pass rusher or that he's stout against the run. He's both. He is going to stuff your running game, and he's going to sack your quarterback. He's going to harass your quarterback. He is an every down player. And when you're talking about moving him down inside, just to keep him on the field, it just shows what kind of talent this guy is. As you said, he's better than J.J. Watt as a college player. I'd have to go back to Courtney Brown to find a guy that just was so dominant. You had to scheme for him. You had to scheme to make sure he didn't beat you. And that's what we're seeing with Bosa. And we're talking about a sophomore, Dan. I mean, technically, we're heading to junior.
Exactly.
We haven't even seen he's gotten so much better. He was so outstanding as a freshman, and then he comes in as a sophomore, and he's the best defensive lineman in the country at the end of the year as a sophomore. So what this guy's going to be able to accomplish by the time, I mean, you think, well, not just for the team, but just to watch him blossom with another year in college if he stayed for a senior year. That's not just being a Buckeye fan. That's just a college football fan, and just see how well he could develop as, that one last year, what he could have been. So, we know he's going. Todd McShay recently said, he's if he had to state right now, he would say he's the best football player in the draft coming up. Whether he'll go number one overall, well, I don't know. I'm still uncertain about whether we'll ever see a strong side end drafted number 1 overall. We didn't see it with Leonard Williams last year, who was the best player in the draft as far as I was concerned. So he fell to number 6. So we'll see what happens with that. But Joey Bosa, everything he's cracked up to be, and more.
Yeah, I would say Leonard Williams might be a bigger dude, but in terms of a natural pass rusher, I would say Bosa's better. And also, I mean, I have a little bit of a fear of the season ahead that he's going to play too much inside out of necessity, and that's more a reflection of my lack of confidence in whoever's going to line up next to Adolphus. But that's going to seriously improve his value for the NFL draft, because the NFL has gone, like every other sport, the new buzzword is versatility. So, I mean, Bosa's the kind of guy you could line up, and I'm just going through it. He could probably stand up in the 3-4 at times. He could rush inside. He could play, 3-4 defensive end, 4-3 defensive end. So I think his versatility is going to help him tremendously. Like I said, I'm in the tank for the guy. All right, last question. This is a much debated topic on Bucknuts about 5 or 6 years ago, and then it was tabled. And now dude's going to have to find out for himself. Terrelle Pryor, will he make it as a receiver in the NFL?
If somebody is patient with him, yeah. But I think it should have happened as soon as he left Ohio State. Somebody should have said, "Look, you know what? You can go look for some other place to play quarterback, or you can move to receiver right now. If you listen to me and move, you will be a guy that's going to make a lot of money at this game, maybe make a Pro Bowl." He's a unique talent. He's not a unique quarterback. Doesn't throw the ball well enough, never did, never will. This is the move he should have made several years ago. What I would do if I was an NFL team is get this guy, assign him, and just let him learn. I wouldn't even think about playing him for a couple of years. Just get him out there and let him learn to play the position. He has the talent. I never worry about a quarterback moving to receiver because they've been handling the ball. They got hands. That's not a concern. It's learning how to run routes. And at this level, you're not learning how to run routes at the college level, learning to run routes for the first time in your life at the pro level. It's happened. I think if anybody can, it's Terrelle Pryor. But it's the odds are against him, mostly because money, salary cap, roster management, teams are not going to have the patience to wait on him to develop into a receiver. If someone did, I think they would benefit from it. Someone just long-term said, we're just going to make a commitment to 2 to 3 years. This guy, we're just going to keep him around and not even worry about him stepping on the field. Just get him to the practice squad and teach him how to play receiver. I think it could benefit him and any team that takes that chance on him.
I'll tell you what, with Pryor, to me, it always starts with him. If he decided this morning he was going to be an NFL receiver and he dedicated his life to it, there's not a doubt in my mind he could do it. But Terrelle, I think his brain holds him back as much as his skills at times. So we'll deal with that as we go. We appreciate Duane stopping by for the past few days to answer your questions and dole out his unique brand of wit and wisdom. Duane, we really appreciate it, brother.
Good to be here. Go Bucks.